Jimmy was in the credit department. The conversation with the specialist did not go well from the very beginning. Sitting across from the guy employee was doing everything he could to refuse him a loan. The bank employee was specifically looking for reasons that would indicate the insolvency of the client. But I still have a small apartment. Can I get at least a minimum amount for a loan? Jimmy objected. The loan officer thought for a moment, then replied, "Yes, that certainly makes a difference. Only we're not a real estate agency. We're only interested in money and nothing else." Jimmy was desperate. He needed the money as soon as possible, and to get it, he could do anything. A week ago, Jimmy had lost a large amount of money in poker to a very powerful man, and it was very bad to mess up with him. Those who didn't repay their debts were usually found in a river with their hands tied or somewhere in the woods with a bullet in their head. Jimmy knew about these cases and wanted to repay the debt as soon as possible. So he was sitting in this van and intended to get a loan without making a fuss. The specialist tried to refuse Jimmy for about half an hour, after which he went to a meeting. "You know, I don't think I can help you, but I think you should contact the director of the bank. They say that in some cases the director makes an exception. Please go to him. His office is on the second floor, the second door on the right. You can't go wrong," said the loan officer and pointed to the stairs. He didn't really want to go to the director of the bank, but if he didn't repay the debt soon, he probably wouldn't need the money anymore. Jimmy knocked on the door labeled director and went inside. "Larry," said the director, raising his chair and holding out his hand to Jimmy. "Have a seat. What brings you to me?" Larry was very young for a bank director. His office was very dark, even though it was still light outside. There was only one lamp on the desk, his laptop and notepad. Very strange, and not like all a bank director's office, Jimmy thought. Frankly, the guy didn't believe he could get any help here. But Larry was a forthright man. "How much money do you need?" 500,000? Maybe 1 million? Maybe 2 millions? The bankers asked. Such sums of money made Jimmy uncomfortable, and since the guy owed the creditors 200,000, he decided to take 500,000 to pay back the debt and try to get even. When Larry heard about the amount, Larry smiled and immediately took out a contract from the table, where everything was written down: surname, first name, and the amount of money he wanted to take. What is service, Jimmy thought. Watching the banker hand over the contract, he had to sign it. At the bottom in a small print were the terms and conditions, which only could be studied with a microscope. "And at what interest rate am I taking this loan?" inquired Jimmy. The banker looked at him with a serious look as if the guy had done something terrible. "Percentage? What are you talking about? There's no interest, and you can get the money back whenever you want. 5 years from now, 10 years from now." Jimmy was shocked at what just had happened to him. It was the first time he had ever seen anything like this. The bank was basically offering him an interest-free loan for an indefinite period of time. How does this bank even exist? The man was about to sign, but the moment he took the pen offered by the banker, his finger was pricked by something, from which a red drop of his blood fell on the sheet lying on the table. For some reason, it landed right on the top of the box, where the signature should have been. Jimmy froze and thought that there must have been some sharp edge of the pen that caused the cut. But the director was not at all embarrassed by the situation. He grabbed a sheet of paper from the table and waved it in the air, as if letting the blood dry. "It's okay, it happens," Larry said with a smile. Then he walked over to the safe and opened it, pulled out a suitcase full of money and held it out to Jimmy. "This is your money. You can rest assured there's exactly 500,000 here," said Larry, and pointed to the customer with his eyes at the door. Still not believing in his luck, Jimmy took the suitcase tightly to himself and hurried to the exit. Having received the amount of money he needed and even more, he was ready to shout with joy. Jimmy decided to celebrate the day. On the way home, he went to the store and bought a bottle of whiskey. He was going to spend the evening in front of the television. He decided to pay off the debt the next day. "Nothing will happen if I pay back the $200,000 tomorrow," Jimmy reassured himself and opened the bottle. The suitcase with the money stood quietly on the floor and pleased him very much. After drinking half of the bottle, he collapsed on the bed and slowly fell asleep. He felt like the man who had solved all his problems and now he could be calm. Jimmy hadn't slept so soundly in a long time, so he didn't hear the click of the suitcase opening. It opened, allowing a strange dark shape to step out. Its profile was remotely human-like and looked more like a blob of energy with a powerful charge of aggression aimed at inflicting pain and suffering. The creature crawled out of the suitcase and stared at him intently, sucked in the smell of money that served as some kind of sustenance and meaning of existence to him. Most likely, it was a ghost or an evil spirit guarding what lay in the suitcase. It moved almost silently around the room and searched for something. Not finding what it wanted, the ghost touched Jimmy. He was snoring and dreaming, so he didn't even feel the faceless thing touch his chin and then his lips. Then it slowly slipped its head into his mouth and then wriggled its body into his mouth, trying to reach Isoghouse as its ultimate goal. Jimmy woke up about 10 minutes after that. His heart began to race, and he started to show signs of panic and suffocation. He was stamping his feet, clinging to the bed and screaming like an animal. Jimmy was experiencing a squeeze that was turning him inside out. The guy didn't know what it really was, but the pain was getting worse. After a few more minutes of this, he threw up all his dinner on the bed and screamed in pain at the top of his voice. After that, he didn't feel much better. In the morning, he was able to get out of bed and try to clean himself up. His head hurt and he didn't feel very good. He looked at the open suitcase of money, and in his head were the thoughts, "I need more money, I need money now." Stuffing his hands in his pockets, he found nothing. Then Jimmy began to collect all the change in the house and put it in the suitcase. It seemed to him that in this way his income could increase several times. He could not think of anything else. The lust for profit took over his mind. He developed an obsessive craving for money at any cost. "Money, where's my money?" Jimmy whispered, looking in every corner. After searching the whole apartment, the guy went to the neighbors, where he began to demand money on loan. He acted as skillfully and convincingly as if he had been a professional banker before. Then he went out on the street and stopping people. Jimmy asked for money to satisfy his devilish passion in his mind. In search of money, the day passed quickly. All this time, the guy didn't eat or drink anything. He became like a patient in a mental hospital. Darkness fell, and the lust for profit became even more acute, which made Jimmy feel like a cannibal, only not a human cannibal, but a money cannibal, who was ready to prowl around in search of money. He even forgot that he was going to repay his debt for the loss today. Now he was more like a predator looking for prey. The lust was so great, he'd beat up a man for $1, and for $100, he'd kill him. Numbing pain and fatigue, Jimmy wandered around the city in search of food for the suitcase that was standing at home. No matter how much you feed them, he'll never get enough. Around 12 a.m., he drew blood for the first time. His lust for profit literally tore his head from the inside out, forcing him to grab a metal pipe and beat the tramp to death. The blood from his shattered head flowed in the sidewalk, only $3 in his pocket. Of course, they didn't satisfy a guy who needed millions. The black man's next to him was a passerby in a hurry to get home. Jimmy jammed a pen down his throat. Money became the only thing he could use to kill for and maim. Toward morning, he saw the pharmacy worker coming from the night shift. It was a death sentence to her. Jimmy knocked the poor woman down in an underpass and beat her on the head until she no longer showed signs of life. He managed to kill 6 people before any of the bystanders called the police. He evaded the chase and hid under the bridge, clutching a cursed bag of money. The guy didn't know what to do next, but an inner voice gave him a gruesome and shockingly violent idea. About 3 weeks later, there was a knock on the door of the bank director. When the barkeep opened the door, he saw a guy wearing black glasses, like those worn by the blind people. In the hands of the guest was a suitcase. The banker smiled understandingly and invited the guest to sit down. Moving by feeling, Jimmy walked to the table and handed the barkeep the suitcase. "Here's the whole amount with the percentage," said the guy in a desperate voice. Larry opened the suitcase and saw that it was full of money. "I see you've done well, young man," said the banker with a smile. At that moment, Jimmy took off his glasses. His appearance was horrible. Instead of eyes, there were black holes. Then he lifted his shirt and showed his stomach. It was covered with fresh wounds from surgery. A few days ago, Jimmy had sold his eyes, his left kidney, and some of his internal organs. All of this was just to satisfy his thirst for profit. It was only then that Jimmy calmed down and found his solace. The banker doubled his capital over the years. He lent money and again troubled the profit after a demon-enraged customer. A demon-wracked customer would bring in the damned suitcase himself. Jimmy was no exception. He went to any length to quench his thirst for money by giving the banker the last of it. Jimmy fell to the floor and died of exhaustion. The banker looked at him and called a guard who took him to the basement. There's a crematorium-like furnace was prepared for such customers. Then, the banker smiled and said, "Who else needs money?"